The scent of wood smoke and old books clung to her brush like a shroud. For weeks, she'd been locked in her room, painting the spirits of the forgotten dead, those whose lives had been so unremarkable that even their names had been lost to time. She was bringing them back with her paintings, imbuing each stroke with the memory of a life half-lived, a story never told. But she hadn't bargained on waking something ancient and very angry. Her brush was an artist, a specialist in restoring old paintings, some as much as 200 years old. Her studio smelled perpetually of linseed oil and turpentine, and her fingers were permanently stained the color of burnt umber. She loved her work, but her true passion was painting the spirits of the dead. Her friends thought this morbid, but she found comfort in it. Faces stared back at her from beneath the canvases, and with each one she brought back, she made sure the dead were honored, remembered, cherished. And usually that was enough. Until now. She had 6 new faces staring back at her from under the drop cloths, and all 6 were whispering her name. Their voices thin and reedy, like wind through dry branches. It was the same with the faces on the canvases she'd already finished. The eyes followed her around the room, and when she slept, she could have sworn she heard them sigh. It was only when her friend Rolly came over that she realized she wasn't alone. "You haven't been sleeping, have you?" he asked, frowning at the dark circles under her eyes. "Not really," she admitted, rubbing her tired eyes. "These paintings, they won't let me." Rolly glanced at the canvases stacked against the wall, their visages obscured by the heavy drop cloths. He knew about the spirits her brush painted, and he also knew that sometimes they were uncontent to stay beneath the canvas once she'd given them form. But this was beyond restless spirits. The air in the room crackled with barely suppressed energy. "I can feel them," he said, his voice hushed. "They're not happy." She nodded, her throat tight. "I know, but I didn't mean to upset them." "You didn't? How?" His eyes widened as he looked at the canvases. "But you've painted over their faces. You've blotted out their memories." She had. That was what she did. With every brush stroke, she brought the dead back, giving them a face to remember them by. She was almost done. Just a few more touches, and the last of the 6 would be complete. So why were they so angry? With trembling hands, her brush pulled the drop cloth away, revealing the last of the 6 faces. She stepped back to admire it, then gasped. The canvas seemed to be sucking the air out of the room, the eyes boring into hers, demanding. The paint was still wet, and she could feel the rage emanating from the canvas, thrumming through her bones. It was overwhelming, terrifying. This wasn't a spirit, not anymore. It was something older, hungrier, something that had been dormant for centuries, waiting for its chance to come back, and she'd given it that chance. Panic clawed at her throat. What had she unleashed? The painting fell from her hands, crashing to the floor. Splintered wood and canvas shards hit the stone tiles with dull thuds, but it wasn't the sound that made her freeze. It was the sound that came after, a low growl that reverberated through the room, shaking the very foundations of the building. Her brush stared at the ruined painting, fear constricting her chest. The growl grew louder, turning into a snarl. Then, like a nightmare-given flesh, something stirred beneath the canvas, clawing at the edges to break free. She stumbled back, knocking over a chair in her haste. The creature pushed itself up, dragging the canvas with it. Its limbs were long and gnarled, like the roots of an ancient tree. And where its face should have been, there was only darkness, an abyss that seemed to swallow all light. She couldn't scream. She couldn't move. All she could do was stare as the creature pulled itself free, dragging the painting with it. Then it spoke. Its voice was like grinding stones, each word a blow that chipped away at her sanity. "You disturbed my slumber," it rasped. "Now I am hungry." Her brush wanted to run, to hide, but her feet were rooted to the spot. She could only watch as the creature lumbered toward her, the painting dragging behind it like a shroud. She could see Rowley then, his face ashen, his eyes wide with terror. "Run!" he screamed at her, and finally she did. She ran, her bare feet slapping against the hard floor, the creature's heavy footsteps echoing behind her. Through the open doorway, she fled, stumbling over boxes and canvases, desperate to put as much distance between herself and the creature as possible. She didn't stop running until she was out in the open, the cool night air stinging her lungs. She looked back, half expecting to see the creature lumbering after her, but the street was empty. Had it not followed her outside? Had she escaped? Relief flooded her, bringing tears to her eyes. Maybe she had been foolish to think she could cheat death, to play God by bringing the dead back. But she hadn't meant to hurt anyone. All she'd wanted to do was help, to give the forgotten dead a face to remember them by. She turned to go back, but froze. In her haste, she'd left the front door wide open. And as she watched, the wind snatched the canvas from inside the house, whipping it across the yard toward her. The abyss on the canvas seemed to stare directly at her, and she could feel the creature's presence behind it, its hunger, its power. Her brush tried to call out, to warn the others, but no sound came out. She opened her mouth again, this time screaming, but the sound died in her throat. She couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The creature was coming for her, and this time she knew there would be nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. When Rowley discovered her brush the next morning, she was kneeling beside the ruined painting, a single tear frozen on her cheek. He knelt beside her, his face grave. He could feel the power emanating from the painting, the anger, the pain. But he could sense something else too, a deep, abiding sadness. He looked at the abyss where the face should have been and whispered, "I'm sorry." He didn't know what had happened here, what kind of creature her brush had unleashed, but he knew that whatever it wasn't her fault. She'd meant well, trying to help the dead, but sometimes good intentions paved the road to hell. As the sun rose higher, the creature stirred beneath the canvas. Its anger seemed to have abated, replaced by a weariness that spanned millennia. It had woken to find itself in a world it no longer understood, surrounded by people who could not help it, who could not understand it. It felt only the echo of its former power, a shadow of its true strength. It reached out, its gnarled fingers curling into fists. It could feel her brush's sadness, her regret, and it understood. It had been forgotten, left to slumber for so long that its own nature had become a mystery to it. It had ached to be remembered, to be spoken of once more. And her brush had given it that chance. But she had also imprisoned it, sealed it beneath layers of paint and canvas, kept it from the world. And now it was angry, not at her brush, but at itself. Why had it taken such cruel vengeance on her? What had it hoped to achieve with its anger? It pushed itself up, its gaze fixed on the window. Outside, the world bustled with life. People walked along the street, unaware of the ancient evil that stirred within the house. It wanted to join them, to walk among the living once more, to feel the sun on its skin and the wind in its hair. But it was afraid. Afraid of what it might do, how it might hurt someone who had only meant to help. For a moment, it just sat there, lost in its memories, remembering a time before it had been forgotten, a time before it had been sealed away. And then it smiled, a sad, wistful smile. It was time to let the past lie. It was time to move forward. Carefully, it began to rip the canvas from the wall, its movements slow and deliberate. When it was free, it stood up, stretching its limbs, feeling the strength returning to them. Then it walked out into the sunlight, leaving the house and the world of the living behind. Her brush didn't realize it at first, but as the days passed, the whispers in the house grew quieter. The eyes watching her became distant, the faces on the canvases losing their haunted look. She took it as a sign that she'd done something wrong, that she shouldn't have tampered with the dead. But it wasn't that. It was because the creature had moved on, had accepted its fate, and chosen to move forward. It had found peace, or as close to peace as it could get. And her brush, though she would never know it, was responsible for that.